We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. We shall never surrender. We shall never surrender.
Let's get ready to rumble!
We're just not gonna quit like De La Hoya. Body touch from Market. Diaz goes in with the right hand. This is gonna be a hellacious war. Why not stop it now? And there's the right top from the corner, and Shane Mosley has annihilated Antonio Martinez.
And boy, are they fighting.
Taylor in trouble. Froch punches and punches, and it's over. I'm going back to England mode.
What's up, boxing fans? It's been a minute or two since Boxing Bookie's been on the podcast digital airwaves. We had the big fight this past weekend. Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather Jr. Biggest fight in boxing history, I guess, financial-wise. Estimated buy rate, according to some in the boxing media, is as high as $4.5 million, which is ridiculous, considering that the fight costs $100, man. I mean, the type of revenue they're generating is just astounding. The global viewership was obviously insane. Some of the internet stats show 10 million plus searches online, particularly regarding that fight. They were showing it for free in Mexico, for free in the Philippines, in probably 160 countries. So I don't know how many people watched that fight. It could have been as high as 500 million. Really hard to tell. But anyways, in regards to the fight itself, I thought it was a pretty decent one, man. Watching it for a second time, sober by myself on television, I definitely felt that it was high-level stuff. That maybe the fans were a little bit too harsh on it watching the first go-around. Obviously, when you're watching the fight live, and there's so much hype, there's so much emotion. Probably a lot of boos involved too. Most people were expecting just a toe-to-toe slug match, which is never going to happen in a Floyd Mayweather fight, and that's not to discredit Floyd. It's just his nature, his style is to be a defensive genius and to figure a guy out, take as least amount of damage as possible, and get the W in the process. So, first time around, even myself, I thought the fight was a letdown. Second time around, watching it, I thought both men put together a really good effort in terms of just trying to win the fight in the best manner possible for themselves. The official result was 118-110, 116-112, 116-112 for Floyd Mayweather Jr. The 116-112, I don't disagree with. The 118-110, I thought it was relatively wide. When it comes to how I actually score the fights and how I actually score the rounds, it's as follows. It's a 3-minute round. I actually break it down into minutes, so there's 3 minutes, so it's like I'm basically breaking it down. So who won the first round, the first minute of the round, who won the second minute of that round, and who won the third minute of that round. An example would be, let's say Floyd Mayweather Jr. lands 6 or 7 hard jabs. Manny Pacquiao is just swinging at air or swinging and hitting on the gloves and missing. I'm going to give Mayweather that first minute of that round for landing those jabs. And then we go back to we go into the second minute of that round. Who is landing more in the second minute? And if nobody lands anything in that minute, including Mayweather or Pacquiao, then Mayweather is firmly in the lead to go ahead and take that round. So it's going to take a minimum of 8, clean punches by Pacquiao to go ahead and win that third minute and ultimately win the round. And that's how I'm looking at the fights. And truth be told, when I'm looking at all the rounds and just watching it closely, some of the at least 3 or 4 of these rounds were really difficult to score, being that it was so close. Some of them literally were decided by 2 or 3 jabs. Not even 2 or 3 power punches, but jabs. And a lot of punches weren't landing for either men throughout the course of the fight. And it's just because it was a tight fight. It's a hard fight for both guys. The speed involved, the reflexes involved, the experience involved. It's going to make it so there's going to be a lot of misses here and there, even by millimeters, in terms of both men. Clean, effective punching for me is what decides who wins a round. I think defense is great, but I think defense alone, you're not really going to win rounds. You have to make a guy pay. You got to counter with something, or you got to lead with something. And that, in my mind, made the fight a lot closer than some of y'all saw it. But I respect people that had to fight 8-4 for Floyd. But this is, the following is going to be my scorecard. Round 1, I gave to Floyd by 2 or 3 punches. I think they were jabs. Round 2 was relatively even. I didn't even give it a score, being that neither man really took control of the round offensively. Third round, I gave it to Floyd. One thing I wanted to note is that the commentators did start to throw in certain comments that made it seem that certain things were landing when they weren't. For instance, you guys can go back and watch the end of the third round, where Mayweather throws a right hand that was called by the commentators as being devastating, when in reality I think it landed clearly on Pacquiao's gloves. Just like Pacquiao clearly landed on Floyd's gloves and other times, and they're not counted. What we're trying to be here is fair, like 50-50 down the middle. Yes, I was busting chops on Twitter that Pacquiao was going to win the fight, but that's all, we're talking shit, and that's, to add to the fun of it all. I always knew this was going to be a really difficult fight for both guys. The fourth round, I gave it to Pacquiao, clearly. The fifth round, I gave it to Floyd, clearly. So at that point, after 5 rounds, I got Floyd up 3, Pacquiao 1, 1 round completely up in the air. 6th round, I give it to Pacquiao. Interesting note that I jotted down at the end of the 6th round, Floyd Sr. was extremely heated at Floyd, saying that he doesn't know what the hell was wrong with him. He just wasn't getting off in a manner that he needed to go ahead and clearly win these rounds. That's after the 6th round. So a lot of people had it even after 6 rounds. I had it 3-2 and 1 for Floyd. The 7th round was really close. I remember when I watched the fight live, I had already assumed that Pac had lost the 7th just based on the fact that he won the 6th so clearly, and the 7th round was a lot less clear. I'd expected him to come back and win the 7th like he won the 6th, but he didn't. So initially watching it live, I thought he lost it. Watching it again, it was such a close round. I had Floyd a little early in the round, Pacquiao later. Neither man landed anything really that significant. I thought just Pacquiao was just a little bit busy in there. Just being busy within itself won't win you the round in my book. You got to be throwing enough so you can actually land something within those busy moments. So if you're throwing 8 or 9 punches and not landing anything, that busyness doesn't count for anything in my book. On the other hand, if you're throwing 8 or 9 punches and you're missing like 7 of them and you're landing 1 or 2 while the other guy is completely defensive, then that can count for something. But like I said, these rounds are extremely difficult to score. A lot of the jabs that Floyd was throwing himself, they were landing at a really low percentage if you look at clean, effective punching, which is based on nothing landing on gloves, nothing landing short on the air, nothing landing on the shoulders, nothing landing on the arms, nothing landing below the belt. It was just a really difficult fight to score for both guys because I didn't see clean, effective punching on a consistent basis. 8th round had it another even round. No score for that. Another interesting note that I jotted down was Floyd Sr. was just as pissed as the 6th round. He was like, "What the hell are you doing, Floyd?" Not that you blowing it, not insinuating that he was losing, but just that he wasn't doing enough to clearly take these rounds. And I felt the same, not just in Floyd's sense, but in Manny's sense too. Like both them guys were really struggling to put on an offensive display to cleanly sweep these rounds. So after 8, I'm looking at 3 rounds for Pacquiao, 3 rounds for Floyd, and 2 rounds even. And then I'm looking at the 9-10 rounds 9 and 10 were extremely close. I think the 9th round you could have edged it for Floyd. The 10th round you could have edged it for Pacquiao. The 11th round was Floyd's best round of the fight by far. Completely by far. I think Floyd did excellent work in the 11th round, and the 12th was just another toss-up. Nothing really happening. Nobody really landing a lot. It was just a really, tough fight to score. But anyways, I thought the fight played out as many believed that it would. A very tactical fight. Manny pressing when he felt that there was an opening, and Floyd, leading with the jab and being, I guess very solid defensively to go ahead and negate Pacquiao's offensive onslaught, which was not as what I expected it to be going into the fight. Looking at the past two fights for Floyd Mayweather Jr. with Marcos Maidana, it was obvious that, not so much the pressure, but the work rate alone would go ahead and give Pacquiao a close fight, just like there were close fights with Maidana. I always thought Pacquiao was a much more dynamic, offensive fighter than Maidana. He's faster, left-hander, better combination punching, shorter punches. But for one reason or another, that just wasn't the game plan from Roach and Pacquiao. I think he pressed well. I think he tried, but I didn't think that he was as reckless as he needed to be to go ahead and get the W. Just for example, in the Joe Calzaghe-Bernard Hopkins fight, very ugly fight. Hopkins considered one of those crafty old guys, but at the end of his career, I thought he just relied way too much on holding to go ahead and utilize defense. But anyhow, when it comes to the Joe Calzaghe-Bernard Hopkins fight, Calzaghe just threw himself at Bernard. It ended up being in the clinch about a zillion times, but he knew that he was going to have to just throw himself at the old vet and just let the punches go, and whatever happened, happened. And when you're looking at the punch stat report for Calzaghe-Hopkins, Calzaghe ended up throwing 707 total punches compared to Hopkins' 468. And that's what everybody expected in terms of Pacquiao's output against Mayweather. But you got to give credit to Floyd for taking that away from Manny. I'm not going to talk about any shoulder injuries because that's something that shouldn't even be talked about. You shouldn't even be making excuses, even if it is a reason, even if it's real. It doesn't matter. Everybody goes into fights hurt with their hands, with back injuries, with whatever. So, for me, it's Floyd's angles and his movement that would take away Manny Pacquiao's consistent output, and that's on Manny. So go ahead and be willing to throw at air, to be willing to consistently miss, just to go ahead and maybe get that percentage point, in terms of swaying the judges to get those rounds. So that's just the way it goes, and you got to give all props to Floyd Mayweather Jr. for doing his thing, getting the W. I didn't think it was as one-sided as many thought it was. I thought it was a lot more competitive than most people would think. Let me see, my final scorecard had something like 7-5 for Floyd. So, I obviously scored it for Floyd. A lot of people had 8-4 for Floyd. Stephen Edwards, the bread man, somebody I really respect in the boxing industry, had an 8-4 for Floyd. So I think 8-4 for Floyd, 7-5 for Pac. Once you start to get in the 9-3 for Floyd, even that's, I think, considered somewhat okay. But 10-2 for Floyd is a stretch. A draw is a little bit of stretch for Pac. So, it's just the way it goes. There was a good competition in there. In terms of what's next for either man, for Floyd Mayweather Jr., he states that he has one fight left, and that's it. Obviously, I don't believe it, just based on the fact that he's making a lot of money. And these fighters, man, there's something about, I guess, that adoration when they're fighting, that they just miss it down the road when they're outside the game, that they can't give it up. So, but according to Floyd, he has one last fight in September. The names that were mentioned for that were Amir Khan and maybe Keith Thurman. I think Khan is maybe a little bit more realistic to go ahead and do that fight in the UK, get a bigger international audience, I suppose. I really don't know. It's hard to say, but Floyd could do whatever he feels like. He is the man at this point in time. As for Manny Pacquiao, I don't know what's going on with him in terms of his injury, Let's consider it legitimate, and if you have a right shoulder injury, that's one of the wheels. And, as a boxer, you need your shoulders to be in motion. You need that looseness in your shoulders. You can't be having no tears in them. So I think at this point in his career, at this age, it's going to be really hard for him to recover 100%. And, maybe he might think about giving it up. But, I wouldn't mind seeing him fight Lucas Matthisi this November. I think that'd be a pretty good fight if he can somehow repair his shoulder by then. So that's pretty much it when it comes to Mayweather Pacquiao. It was a hell of an event. It was a hell of a fiasco. A lot of celebrities in the mix. A lot of social media nuts going crazy. I had my fair share of shit talking leading up to the fight. Had a lot of fun talking with the fans. It'd been a while. We've been looking forward to this thing for years. Finally happened. And now it's on to the future, man. Some will say that boxing took a step back from this fight, which it's crazy because this fight actually had more action, in my opinion, than the Mayweather De La Hoya fight, which everybody was down on when it happened, stating that it hurt boxing, and maybe to a certain extent it didn't help bring in new fans per se, based on the action alone. But as long as both guys give honest performances, and watching it again by myself on the replay, I definitely felt like both did give honest performances to win the fight. In terms of giving the performance to go ahead and put on Fight of the Year, absolutely not, because that's not what should be expected of these guys, to give each other brain damage. That's not. It depends on the style of the guys, right? Like a Brandon Rios versus a Provodnikov, and somehow one of these guys ends up trying to fight like Floyd Mayweather Jr. That don't make sense. The style of those guys will give you Fight of the Year. The styles of Pacquiao and Mayweather, just be happy that both guys performed to the best of each other's abilities, which they did. In terms of the state of overall boxing in 2015, I think it's an interesting turning point for the industry. For the longest time, top-level boxing is taking place predominantly on HBO and Showtime and pay-per-view. Now we're seeing less pay-per-view, and we're seeing, I guess I wouldn't consider it a complete revival, but it's interesting opportunities for boxing to spread its wings with the PBC series, with new groups like Rock Nation getting time on channels like BET. I think it's something like 18 or 17 different channels in the United States that are going to be showcasing boxing regularly within the next 24 months. So it'll be interesting to track over the long haul whether that'll have a positive effect on, I guess, just the notoriety of boxing. Because people, especially people within the industry, they don't realize how small boxing is compared to every other sport out there, just based on exposure alone. I mean, with the NBA, you got, I don't know, dozens of games every week. With boxing, we've only had, 50 or 60 events in an entire year. So we need more events. We need more exposure. We need more distribution. We need more marketing. We need it to be more accessible for people to tune in, because I don't believe that it's always the big fights that are going to bring more fans into the fold. It's probably going to be just somebody that doesn't expect a whole lot from boxing and just happens to tune in, and then somehow it catches their eye and they get intrigued. So it's interesting times in boxing 2015. Al Haymon and the PBC guys are really going for it. Balls out. They raised over $400 million to go ahead and try to create their business plan, their business model. I don't know if they'll succeed. We'll see what happens. Ultimately, the viewership has to be there. Ultimately, the advertisers and the sponsors need to make an agreement with PBC, and that will take some time. So we'll see what happens, but I do believe that it is a good thing that boxing is on free television. I just hope that we can see some exciting fights on that platform. In terms of my final thoughts, just happy the big fight took place. It's good to see boxing back on the big stage, and it's gonna, that's gonna be a general sentiment that boxing is dead, because most people just don't follow it. It hasn't been accessible, and I think we're gonna see some changes taking place, over the next 2 to 5 years, and hopefully, fingers crossed, things work out for everybody in the industry. I don't necessarily want to see any promoters being put out of business. I think everybody has their place. And hopefully we'll see a resurgence that we haven't seen in quite some time. I'd like to see some of these, these champion boxers in the United States get some notoriety, get some mainstream notoriety, get their names out there. It's embarrassing when guys like Tim Bradley aren't considered household names. They need to be, man, because they put it out there. They put it out there on the line. They're putting their health at risk in a manner that no other athlete's doing. Yes, I understand there's risks involved with baseball, basketball, and especially football, but when it comes to boxing, it's literally their life on the line. So I do believe that these guys should have the opportunity to earn as much money as possible, get as much notoriety and sponsorship dollars as possible, to earn as much as they can outside the ring, so they don't have to keep doing it and end up a little punch drunk at the end of their career. So props to Mayweather Pacquiao. Props to the guys that are trying to get boxing back in the mainstream in 2015, 2016. And we'll see what happens. See you guys later.
Well, I mean, you know, what are you applying this to, young Chavez? Well, I'll tell you, Claudia is... Joshua Clyde, don't let me go rugged man on both here, you know what. By the way, that guy, Rugged Man, he's my son.